Challenge webinar. We're dealing with overcoming selfishness, and I'm Scott Turansky and Joanne Miller. So
I'm Joanne Miller.
Yes, that's right. You are. Okay. Well, let's do this. I'm going to stop the share so we can get started. I'm excited to share some things about selfishness in the home because, well, probably we should ask this question and tell people how we came up with this idea. Why did we raise this question? Why did we end up doing this particular exercise, this challenge with folks?
I think it comes back to just wanting so much to connect with people. We've all been through a difficult time this last year and a half, and we know families are struggling, and we just really wanted to connect with people. We're looking for a point of connection, and I think selfishness is it. We certainly see a lot of selfishness in all of us. So especially when things get hard, things struggle, like through the pandemic and all of that, I think families have really struggled with selfishness and kids just not responding in ways that parents had hoped, and just wanting some answers and some help.
And we wrote a book about selfishness.
Yes, we did.
Started this we've been working together for how long has it been?
No, it's been about 30 years now.
30 years. We came out with our first book. We wrote it in the 90s. And that's the book that I think we're going to feature here tonight. And we're going to talk more about it because it's a book about selfishness in children.
Yes, that book is called Say Goodbye to Whining, Complaining, and Bad Attitudes in You and Your Kids. But we like to call it the Honor Book. The Honor Book is near and dear to our hearts. We've seen it transform so many families and just the relationships and grow young children into healthy adults. This concept of honor, they talk about, if they've been raised with honor, they talk about it as adults and how much it has meant to them and to their development.
As I work with families in the biblical parenting coaching program, we've trained over 400 coaches now. And as I work with them, we see that one of the main things we're trying to do is help children overcome their selfishness. They're quite self-focused many times. We're trying to help them address some of those things. So being able to do a webinar about this, I'm sure we'll have enough material to fill up a whole hour as we not only deal with the problem, we talk about solutions. And we've been working on solutions for a long time, not just in our professional lives, but even in our personal lives. I was just thinking about how we went to Africa. I don't know if you guys know, but the Miller family and the Turansky family went to Africa for a while. And Joanne and I taught parenting seminars out in the village through Kikuyu translators. Joanne had her translator, I had my translator. But then when we were done ministering, we went on a vacation down from Nairobi down to the coast where Mombasa was. And we developed a game that we were playing there called
the Oops and All game. And you can read about it in the Say Goodbye to Whining book. Basically, the deal was our two families were together in one van, driving a long distance, really a whole day trip. There was no air conditioning. We were just driving along, trying to keep the kids occupied. Kids ranging from, how old was Josh at the time?
I think he was 13, 14. Was 15 years old?
15 was the oldest, and the youngest was my son, probably 7 years old. Just all these 7 kids between 7 and 15, you can just imagine, and then 4 adults. And of course, sometimes adults are somewhat selfish also. So we developed the Oops and Ah game just to focus a little bit on speech and making sure that our speech was honoring as we spent that amount of time together in the drive.
All right. So when would we say oops?
Oh, oops. Yeah. So if someone said something that was not very kind or was self-focused, maybe boasting, that would get an oops response.
I remember one time I was driving the van and I said, "Oh, I'm the best driver in all of Kenya." And I got an oops just to kind of play up the game and help people experience what we were doing together. So that was a lot of fun just to kind of lay that out.
But then we would encourage children to say kind things to one another, helpful, uplifting things, and that would get an response.
Yes. So the oops and all game. We'll share with you that and more ideas as we move into some of the solutions that we want to share with you. Let's take a moment and introduce ourselves in case you don't know who we are. My name is Scott Turansky. I'm married to Carrie, and Carrie and I have 5 children and 7 grandchildren presently. And we live in New Jersey. I'm a pastor of a church. I teach at Concordia University as a professor there. I teach the parenting program, and I train the coaches at the National Center for Biblical Parenting.
And I'm Joanne Miller. I'm married to Ed, and Ed and I have 2 grown sons, and our oldest son, Dave, is married. And he and Amanda have 2 children, so I have young grandchildren. And I'm a pediatric nurse, and I continue to work as a nurse, as well as watch my grandchildren full-time right now and work for the National Center for Biblical Parenting.
Now, Joanne and I have written 15 books on parenting. We've also trained the coaches, and then we speak around the country teaching about parenting seminars. There's different divisions of the National Center for Biblical Parenting. One of them is helping churches develop their parenting ministry. That's the banner that we have behind us. We help churches do that in order to equip them to do parent discipleship. We also work with individual families, give them solutions, thus the Family Challenge, in order to equip families to make some changes in their own homes. Here, we have to start today by thanking our donors. So there are donors that we have at the National Center for Biblical Parenting who have made this possible. I would just ask you to consider becoming a donor at the National Center for Biblical Parenting. Just go to our website, biblicalparenting.org, and up in the upper right-hand corner is donate. It allows us to do these kinds of things for free so that parents can benefit from them. We can bless people. There are churches now getting together and around this idea of selfishness, having their own little groups and so on. So we want to continue to do that, and we invite you to be a part of that with us, be a partner with us at the National Center for Biblical Parenting.
We really value our donors. We really value those who contribute, those who walk alongside us, those who pray for us. So thank you. And we just love to expand that team if you would consider that as well.
Now, along those lines, let me tell you what's up next for us, because you want to be thinking about challenge number 2. I know we're just in challenge number 1 right now, but let's give you a preview of what we're going to do in challenge number 2.
Challenge number 2 is going to address some of the tension in families. We know that we want, as a family, we want our families to be close. As parents, we want that close connectedness with our children, but there's often tension. There's often walls being built, and we want to address that specifically and give you some tools for developing closeness in your family.
So the whole idea of working with these ideas, the challenges, it come out of this idea that we know that the real change takes place in family life when parents are intentional. If you can take 5 days and kind of work on kindness in your home, you can start the ball rolling to bring about some change. If you want to have closeness, there's specific things you can do. We're going to show you what that looks like when we come to that. And we're thinking about putting that off in November, because November, December, closeness, holidays, it's a great opportunity to put all that together, right?
And that will allow you to continue to address selfishness, work on honor in your home through September, but then also throughout the month of October, continuing to go over things that you've been working on in September. So we're not moving too quickly just to the next thing, but that honor, that kindness, that taking initiative is really going to take hold in your children's hearts before we move to the next challenge. So look for that in November.
All right, so we're now looking at the first challenge, which is addressing selfishness in the home. I think it would be helpful for us to spend some time looking at the problem of selfishness. Then we'll spend some time looking at the solution and give people lots of ideas. That's what we specialize in, is practical biblical advice. So you'll be able to take these and run with them as you are able to move forward. But let's talk about what selfishness looks like. We're going to start talking about what selfishness looks like. But as we do, if you could just put over in the chat a way that selfishness is demonstrated in your home, we'd like to acknowledge that as well. So if you see any, we'll be looking for some comments that you make there, and we'll be happy to acknowledge those as well. But let's talk about what it is. How does it manifest itself in family life?
Well, certainly it is in family life, and we all know it. We all recognize selfishness when children are demanding their own way, when children are wanting the first piece, the biggest piece, the first turn, that sort of thing. But there's a lot of ways that selfishness really is demonstrated in any one of our hearts. And I think we can look at how that comes out in kids and think about it a little more so that we can determine a best solution, a best way of responding to those indications of selfishness.
You know, I picture the person, the teenager with 2 headphones in, walking around the house, not paying attention to anybody, going in the kitchen, getting what they want, leaving things out, going back in the room, just self-focused tendencies. Connie says whining, screaming. Yes, those are examples. Carrie says leaving messes around the house. Mark says disagreeable, disengaged, inconsiderate. Those are all examples of what selfishness looks like. You can keep adding them there for us and for the benefit of others, but I think we're beginning to recognize it in our own homes. I think also it has to do with the way we interact. You know, sometimes there's manipulations that kids have where they start whining or they complain or they argue or they start trying to control situations to get what they want. So that whole relational patterns that children face is also one of the things that takes place.
And the bottom line is children want their own needs met. They want to be heard. They want to be acknowledged. They want what they want. They want their desires met. Of course, it starts with infancy. Babies cry when they're hungry, and they need to do that. They need to let you know their needs. But as children get older, they have a greater capacity to care for other people, but that doesn't come as naturally. And so we want to see those signs that a child is just focused on themselves. They're just meeting their own needs, not thinking about others. And we're going to challenge it, because as children grow and as people develop, we have to develop a way of working with one another to develop the sense of meeting others' needs, not just our own.
See, as we're working with parents, sometimes we ask them, okay, if we're on a scale from -10 to 0, some parents would say, I'd be happy with 0. Let's get rid of the selfishness, move to 0. We aren't content with that. We don't think God is content with moving to 0. We need to move to +10. And +10 is this whole biblical concept of honor that we wrote this book about. Say goodbye to whining, complaining, and bad attitudes in you and your kids. Some parents say, I can't even imagine that because we've got so much selfishness. And we're saying honor is so powerful. It can get your kids seeing what needs to be done and doing it without being asked. That's what honor does. Some parents will say, I can't even get my kids to do what I expect them to do, let alone doing more than what's expected. Honor is the key. It's a biblical concept. God designed it for us. And so we want to engage in that kind of training of our children. And I just love that whole biblical concept of honor that's there.
See, but here's the key. We're not just talking about different behaviors. We're not just talking about not doing one thing, doing something different. We're not just stopping an unwanted behavior and replacing it with a different behavior. What we're looking for is a heart response that's different. And so as we start this training in honor, as we start practicing kindness, taking initiative, demonstrating honor, it changes a person from the inside out. It's a heart level response that we're working on in our children. And that's when we see the real benefit come. We're not just stopping selfishness really, but we're developing something very important that our children need for the rest of their lives.
This is a key element that Joanne is saying here, that we're not just dealing with behavior change, we're dealing with the heart of a child. And many parents, this is kind of foreign. They think about the heart as just talking to their kids more or hugging them more or somehow connect or touching them, is something, that's heart, about the heart. And those things are good. But we're talking about tendencies that children have. And there are specific solutions that we have developed and we've put into our training materials that can help parents understand it's not just one idea. You're going to get a lot of ideas tonight. We're going to share ideas with you. But I would suggest that many people need to go back to the beginning and do heart work. Yeah. They need to go back and try to understand what the principles are that make heart work work. We have designed a video training program called Parenting is Heart Work. And we have the privilege of having several people following up this webinar with Zoom parent training events. They're going to start in October. You might take a snapshot of this screen. And we've asked these people from around the world to participate in these trainings. So notice in USA to Canada, Lavette Sadler, she's going to run the one in this time zone. BJ Muir, who was just on a few minutes ago, he's going to run the one for homeschooling families and the specific needs that they might have all over the world. Samson Iyaye, he's going to deal with this in Africa. He's from Nigeria. Elena Svetslot is going to be working on this from Europe. She lives in the Netherlands. So there are these groups taking place all over. You'll find out more information about these in the Take the Family Challenge Facebook group. It's $25 per household for your 8 weeks of training. That's a small amount that you're paying the facilitator to be able to lead you. These facilitators are all trained by the National Center for Biblical Parenting. So we're grateful for their participation from all over the world. I just think if you're going to deal with selfishness, it's not just about behavior. It's about something much different. It's about something deeper inside of the child's heart. And if we don't deal with it, then it turns into these problems of victim mentality that children have, like the rest of the world is responsible for my problems and it's never my fault, or the entitlement mentality that says you owe me. All of those things are examples of selfishness, and it can get quite advanced in a child's heart. So that's why we're working to try to address it. Those are some things that it looks that's why it looks so challenging sometimes in people's lives.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so we see behaviors that are selfish behaviors, like the whining, the complaining, the no, I won't do it, or that's my toy, or I want to go first, or I want that seat. You see the selfish behaviors, but that's an indicator of a heart issue. And from that heart issue is going to grow some other problems if not addressed. So certainly we know that selfishness begins in the heart. We are all born as selfish people, but it needs to be addressed in the heart if we're going to deal with some of those other things growing out of the heart as well.
So it's not just a convenience thing. We're not just trying to make family life less annoying. We're actually building life skills in children's hearts by helping them deal with the selfish tendencies that they might have. So this is a strategic thing we're talking about tonight. It's going to help you a lot. On a theological level, I just have to express this so we understand that selfishness comes from the sin nature. That we all have a sin nature, not just kids, parents too. We all have a sin nature, and the essence of a sin nature is selfishness, focus on self. So the ultimate solution for selfishness in anyone's life is salvation through Jesus Christ. And so turning your life over to Christ is the first step to moving out of that. Now, we want that for our children, but even when children are not there yet, God has us doing training in the lives of kids. God doesn't say only train children who are saved. He doesn't do that. He says you train all children. You're actually building this righteousness container for them, and then we're praying that God will bring life into that container. So we want to train our children. We're going to give you some ideas of what that looks like as we move forward.
Yes,
it's important, I think, before we go off the subject of the problem, is to address some of the common things I think parents do that might inadvertently contribute to the problem of selfishness in the lives of kids.
sure. We could mention some of those things just to be on the lookout for. If you see this in yourself, you might want to think of some new strategies. One of the common practices, I think, among most parents, the thing is, we want our children to be happy. We want them to enjoy life. We want them to have a happy childhood. And we're looking for things to please them. And sometimes we do too much. We just try and please them. We try and please them. And it gets out of control because they don't have the character necessary to maintain all the things we're giving them. And we're just trying to give them the things that will delight them. And it's fun to delight our children. And we want that for them. We want them to be delighted. But if we keep giving and giving and their character is not there to manage that, then we are just feeding the selfishness in that child's heart.
I would suggest the definition of overindulgence is not just giving too much to your kids, it's giving your kids more than their character can handle. We have to understand that overindulgence is each child specific. You might say, I'm not giving my kid too much. Well, maybe you are if your child can't handle it. Selfishness is one of those things that happens when we say to children, if we continually saying to them when they go out the door, have fun, then we're communicating that their life mission is all about happiness and fun. That is not the truth. Some parents believe that if they make their kids happy, their kids are going to have a good self-esteem. It's a problem. Here's the problem. When you pursue pleasure, you end up with addiction. Pleasure is not the goal of life. Pleasure is a byproduct of a mission-oriented view of life. So we want to be focused on the mission, and then pleasures we do enjoy, but they're not, can't be our goal. So yes, that's one of the things we do is we say to kids, have fun. We want to please them continually. That's dangerous because it feeds that selfishness.
And now we're not going to talk about these things that we do to make you feel guilty. That's not our goal here. We don't want you to feel guilty or to regret some of the things. Only in that we can think of some new ways to respond to our children and catch ourselves if we're encouraging their selfishness. Another thing that we do sometimes as parents is we reward children for doing the right thing. And there's nothing wrong with rewards and nothing wrong with having a positive outcome when you've done the right thing. But if we have an overemphasis of reward and punishment, Children will begin expecting a reward every time they do the right thing.
Yeah.
And that, of course, leads to that entitlement mentality. What? I've done my homework. I should have a reward. What? I cleaned my room. I should have a reward. Aren't you going to pay me? I set the table. And so we get this entitlement that I should have all these things I want because I've been a good kid or because I did what you told me to. And that, again, can get out of hand and lead to selfishness or increased selfishness, of course.
And I think this starts early. Parents will say, clean up your toys and you can have a snack, finish your homework, you can go out and play, and it just continues on then through all of our parenting journey. It's dangerous because we overemphasize rewards and it just feeds the selfishness. It basically says to a child, if you do what I say, I'll give you what you want. We feed the selfishness in children, and no wonder they end up with this victim mentality or entitlement mentality. We want to be careful of that as parents.
Sure. And so I would just say, if you see selfishness as a problem, if you see an entitlement mentality or a victim mentality developing, that's when you say, okay, let's try some different parenting strategies then, because what we're doing right now has led us down a path we don't want to continue on. Let's try some new things.
Let's take another idea that sometimes parents engage themselves in, which is this whole idea of choices. I think sometimes we're told in humanistic thinking, you should give your children choices, then they won't get upset because then they're choosing. Now, I do think choices are good to give to children sometimes. Do you want daddy to put you to bed, or do you want mommy to put you to bed, but you're going to bed? Okay. So I think the idea of choices can be helpful. However, if we're continually giving children choices, then we're feeding their selfishness. So they have to feel like they're in control, and that can be a problem for them too.
Again, so choices can build some self-confidence, but if taken to the extreme, children don't do what they're told without a choice. And they have to wait till they want to do it until they do what they're told. So we want to be careful. If you're seeing that as a problem, you might want to pull back on the choices. Just so sometimes we're saying to a child, you need to do it this way, and make sure the child is able to respond. We say to children, obey first, and then we'll talk about it. A child needs to be able to obey first, needs to be able to take the blue cup and not, decide what color they want every time. They need to be able to sit in the seat they're told to sit in. So we want to work on those skills with children if we're seeing this as a problem.
Another idea is this idea of distraction, distracting children by saying, oh, let me give you something else, so that we're not saying no to children. This is very common in preschools today, where there's sometimes this whole plan. The preschool says you never say no to a child. Rather, you distract them to give them something else. Do you realize what that's doing? That's saying to a child is, I'm going to give you something else that you want more than this, so that you will choose something different than what you're doing. It appeals to the selfishness again. There are times when we need to say no to children because it helps them be able to deal with some of that selfishness that they have.
Sure. And distraction is helpful with young children, especially if you've got a baby rolling over on the changing table, you hand them a toy to distract them.
That's right.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's a good technique.
Yeah.
But if we're constantly distracting children away from being disappointed, then I think we're doing them a disservice, because children need to learn to accept no as an answer. They need to be able to handle disappointment, learn the skill of being content, those things. So we don't always distract. Sometimes we just say no.
Another way that parents can inadvertently contribute to selfishness is that they engage when kids manipulate. If a child manipulates by whining or complaining, and the parent says, okay, stop whining, I'll give you what you want. Many parents know this already, but we sometimes still do it, and it's dangerous because we're feeding the selfishness in children. We have to be careful of that. So there are several things we want to be watching in family life on our own part. Let's pause for a moment, and I want to ask you a question. In fact, I want to do a poll here, and I want to ask you about following instructions. Do you see selfishness in this area of following instructions? Let's see. I guess I don't get to do that. Hold on. We're going to have to wait, I think, because they're out of order, and so I'm not getting to the one I want. So we're not going to do a poll after all. Let's go on and let's talk more about some of this ideas about selfishness, because I just want to address this idea before we go to solutions, why selfishness is dangerous. Because I just want people to understand. I just don't think sometimes parents understand how deeply this is rooted in a child's life. So what are the problems that come out of selfishness that you might suggest?
Well, certainly we're going to have relationship problems. If a child continues in their selfishness, they're going to have a hard time getting along with people. If they're always seeking to meet their own needs first, they're not going to be a very good friend or sibling or teammate. It definitely hinders relational skills if we allow selfishness to continue.
Another thing is, in the biblical parenting coaching program, we deal with three basic emotions that children experience. They are anger, sadness, which is disappointment, accepting no as an answer, and anxiety. Those are your three big emotional categories. And if we don't address selfishness, then those things get worse in the lives of children. When we started dealing with selfishness, then those things can diminish. We're creating an internal framework to address children and help them to be emotionally healthy in their lives. So that's another danger you want to be watching for as you work with children.
Selfishness certainly hinders cooperation. We all know that cooperation is an important skill in any of our lives. If you're going to be successful in relationships, you're going to be successful at school, you're going to be successful in a job, you need to be able to cooperate, to give and take, to understand that other people go first. Sometimes other people's ideas are used. That's all okay. It needs to happen. So we need to deal with selfishness in order to develop cooperation.
All right. I think we've talked long enough about the problem.
I think so too. I like solutions.
I know you think a lot of them too. I appreciate your partnership in these books that we write and the solutions that you come up with. So thank you for that. And so as we start moving into this idea of the solution, I think we got to talk about this, the book we wrote, just briefly, so people have an idea of the power of this curriculum that we wrote.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The book we wrote is called Say Goodbye to Whining, Complaining, and Bad Attitudes in You and Your Kids. It's an entertaining book about the concept of honor. We define honor in very practical terms. We say that honor is treating people as special, doing more than what's expected, and having a good attitude. We talk about how to teach that to our children part by part. We talk about where in the scriptures we see the word honor and how it's used. And then we apply the concept of honor to sibling conflict. We apply the honor to parents honoring children, children honoring parents. How as a family can we honor those outside the home? Because it's, again, we don't want to be self-focused as a family. We want to be honoring those outside our family. So we take this concept of honor and try to apply it to every aspect of family life in this book. And then even at the end of the book, we've included 8 family together times to help you teach the concept of honor in your home. And that's just the Say Goodbye to Whining book. We've put together an honor special for you as part of this challenge. And that includes children's curriculum. If you have children ages 3 to 12, it includes an audio CD of one of our live seminars introducing the concept of honor. And that's one you can listen to as a family. If you want to take this idea, introduce it to your family. You may say, let's listen to these other speakers and hear what they have to say. And then how we can ask the question, how does that apply to our family? What can we do with this concept in our home? So those 3 pieces together make the honor special we've made available to you.
And you can purchase that. It's available on our website. It's available in the Family Challenge, Take the Family Challenge website. And it's available in the Facebook group. So you can see that special and take advantage of it, because you really want to be able to embrace a multifaceted approach to dealing with selfishness. Honor is really God's solution. Honor is God's anti-selfishness program. And so if we want to really take advantage of what God is doing in the lives of our children, we teach them honor and what that's all about.
Can I say one more thing about that?
Sure.
Before you go on? The children's curriculum gives you activities, crafts, games, Bible stories, object lessons, all for ages 3 to 12. If you have older children, that Say Goodbye to Whining book is so helpful in your home. So don't think this is just a package for young children and the book is just for young children. After we wrote that book, we as a family read that book. Our kids were heading into the teenage years. Ed and I and the boys read and discussed the book together. And it did a tremendous amount for us growing in honor as a family, kind of leveling the playing field as we discussed how parents can do things differently, how kids should do things differently. And it really was a tremendous opportunity for us to grow as a family going through that book together. So I would suggest if you have teens, you want to use that as some reading material in your home.
We read that book as a family too. And it's hard as we're reading it to our kids would say, hey, wait a minute, that's a story from our family. The names are changed, but that's us. So yeah, you're right.
Well.
That's what we did. And now this book is an audio book. Say goodbye to whining, complaining, bad attitudes in you and your kids. You can find it. It's an audio book. You can access it from our website, biblicalparenting.org. Just type in the search field, honor. Is that a good idea? Type in honor or say goodbye to
Or just
whining.
anywhere you get your audiobooks, you should be able to find Say Goodbye to Whining.
Yes, it's a great book, and you can listen to it on audio. That's helpful as well. All right, we've got some solutions we want to share with people that are going to help them. And I think that some children don't realize that they're selfish. They're so self-focused. They don't even know there's a problem. And so I think the first thing we've got to do is raise the awareness level here. So let's just talk about that.
They're not selfish on purpose. They just only think about themselves.
That's right.
Just the way it is. And certainly we do want to raise the awareness level. That's partly what we were doing with the Oops and Ah game that we developed. We want to help children see their selfishness. And so we're going to look for opportunities just to point it out, to talk about it. Sometimes you're only thinking about yourself, and this is going to be a problem for you. I'm going to help you understand what that looks like. So when you're playing with your brother, you want to let him have the first turn. You want to let him choose what color pieces. Let's think about ways to honor your brother today and see how that goes for you. And then when the child is acting selfishly, you might just put up a finger and say, wait a minute, that looks like selfishness. Do you see that? Let's try it differently. Just so we're raising the awareness level and allowing the child to see it.
See, children have this thing going on inside of their hearts, and they're just kind of going on with these tendencies. Jesus is the one who taught us that it's out of the heart that the mouth speaks. The key word is tendencies. When we see our children being self-focused, that's a tendency, and we're just trying to speak into that to try to break the cycle that's going on to raise the awareness level. One of the tools we use is what we call the observe and run technique. I like this because sometimes what happens with parents is that they engage in arguments with their kids, or they feel like if I'm going to talk about this, I'm starting a conversation and I got to end up with this conversation. The observe and run technique is basically you're going through the kitchen and the child's left something out and walking out. Well, I think maybe you want to look back and see if you left any selfishness behind, and you keep going. In other words, you don't stay there and engage. Sometimes you're raising the awareness level by just giving a little bit of feedback and continuing the process. It is possible that your child always likes to have the last word. So fine, you're gone, but the child's still thinking about what you said. So the observe and run technique, I think, is another way that we can raise the awareness level in family life.
Yeah, and sometimes we're making observations, or sometimes we're just slowing down the process. If the child is whining, you may say, wait a minute, try that again. Or that sounds like whining. Can you try that again? Just raising the awareness level. It doesn't have to be a discipline situation. You're just calling attention to the problem and having the child try again.
This is important because sometimes parents don't realize the child's whining, and it just goes on and on and on. Or the child starts arguing, and it takes two to argue. So the parents just engaged in this. Sometimes we just need to say, whoop, we're arguing here. I'm done. Or we say, whoop, that's whining. Why don't you go back out and try again? We say to kids, there's two kinds of people in the world. There's whiners and solvers. Which one are you going to be? And so whiners look at the problem. Solvers look at the solution. So if a child comes into the kitchen and says, I'm hungry, even if they don't use a whiny voice, they're focusing on the problem. And so we say, whoa, that's focusing on the problem. What's the solution? Why don't you go back out and try again? So when the child comes back in, they need to think of what's the solution. They might say, could I please have a snack? That's a solution instead of focusing on the problem. It's a mentality that we're helping our children see that it's not all about them and not about complaining about life. We're working towards solutions. So come up with a solution. Don't just tell me about a problem. We can basically say to children in a gracious way, but firm way as we're working with them.
And that same technique can be used. A child's come in complaining about something that happened at school. And they may be communicating a bit of a victim mentality. You might just say, I'm sure that was really difficult. What could you have done to help the situation get better? Or how did you respond? Did you make it better? just helping the child see that they have some control here in how they're responding to a difficult situation. So again, we want to raise the awareness level. If they're only focused on the problem, we want to help them see that they can be part of the solution if they choose to respond differently.
Let me give you another idea that I think is a parenting strategy as you're thinking about working with your children, and that is to move from the issue to the process. If you say to your son, we're not having a snack now, that's the issue. If you say you need to change that shirt because you've worn it 3 days already, then that's an issue. But when the child starts arguing or complaining or yelling, that's the process. So you as a parent can't continue talking about the issue. You can't say, look, if you've worn a shirt for 3 days, then it's not good to wear it another day because it starts to smell. You can't say we're going to have snack in a little while. You don't want to talk about this. You want to move and talk about the process, which is the way you're treating me right now. And you say, wait a minute. The way you're treating me right now is not right. It's not good. So we move to the process, and that's what helps us to be able to focus on the selfishness, not just on the issue. So issue versus process, a very important part of raising the awareness level. I find that many parents inadvertently keep talking about the issue because children will bait them. They'll start yelling at them. And so parents continue to stay on the issue while child's yelling at them. You know what you're doing when you do that is you're just you're endorsing or validating the child's poor response. So it's very important when you see dishonor in a home, when you see selfishness taking place, that you stop the interaction, you draw attention to that process. Do you see the way you're treating me right now? I'm not going forward, but you told me we're not talking about the shirt right now. The way you're treating me is not right. You need to go take a break, settle down, come back and see me when you're ready. Or you need to go out of the room and try again. We're drawing attention to this process and not allowing a dishonoring process to continue. Very, very important as we're trying to raise the awareness level with children.
Now, one of the key elements of raising the awareness level is, as a parent, we want to not engage our emotions. We want to be firm. We want to stop things. No, we're not going to talk that way, or no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to argue about it. We want to stop the process, but we don't want to become emotional about it. And that's hard for us as parents. I think sometimes we let a problem go on longer than we should, and we've become emotional before we stop it. And so I think just this idea of having a family challenge number one, taking the family challenge, it's raising the awareness level for us as parents. So we're thinking about selfishness now. We're seeing it when it happens, and we can be more deliberate at raising the awareness level for our children. We can be more deliberate in stopping things sooner. We can be more deliberate and less emotional at addressing the issue. And I think that's going to be key for many of us. And we talk about in many of our resources about separating firmness from harshness.
Oh, very important.
And as we're taking this on and addressing this in our children, we don't want to use harshness, but we do want to be firm. We're not going to live this way anymore. We're going to deal with the selfishness, and we're going to look for a different response. And so I think as parents, we want to be raising the awareness level in our homes, looking for it, watching for it, and then doing something about the problem sooner. And we'll find we're able to do it without the emotional outbursts ourselves and see some real results take place.
So one of the big parts of the solution, as you're trying to develop a solution for selfishness in your home, is to raise the awareness level. That's going to be a key component. Now we're going to move into another category of things that's in the teaching idea. So let's talk about teaching, then we'll talk about training. Sometimes these overlap, but teaching has more to do with information, trying to explain things to children in ways that connect with them. The light bulb goes on. Teaching is a really important element of our work with children. So we want to try to teach them about honor, teach them about selfishness. We want to give them some more insight into life. That's what teaching is all about.
Teaching is important. Our children need more information. They need to develop skills to respond to life differently. And so we want to teach them to be more aware of their surroundings. Many children are really not aware of how their actions affect other people. They're so self-focused that they're only thinking about themselves. So doing some teaching about sensitivity training, some teaching about being aware of the feelings of other people, maybe doing an exercise with sad, mad, and glad. Is that person sad, mad, or glad? How did your brother respond in that situation is a great question, because children don't even think about that often. So developing a sensitivity to others and awareness of those around them is an important place to do some teaching.
Now we're going to share some more teaching ideas here and some training ideas. While we do, maybe you tried something in the family challenge. Maybe you had some success. Maybe something took place where you did some work and it paid off. Would you share that in the chat? Say, we did this, just a couple sentences maybe, so that others can see ideas that you have, that you did, that tried to either raise the awareness level of selfishness or work on a solution somehow. Just take a moment and jot something into the chat of things that you did. We have some of those comments in the Take the Family Challenge Facebook page, Facebook group, which is great, but maybe you have another idea that you might just share with us here that you did as you're trying to work on this for that 5-day period of time. Maybe it went longer than 5 days, but you had an idea. So if you have one, go ahead and share that in there. Let me share some more ideas with you. One of the things I would suggest is that we want to not use words and dialogue, but we want to use activity, because the language of children is activity. So that's why we did the 5-day challenge. The 5-day challenge was just one idea to raise the awareness level of selfishness and then move toward kindness. Okay, if we can be doing that with our children, it's just one activity, and children learn from activity. So we want to use that when we can.
Sure. We also want to do some teaching about the words we're using to develop different character qualities in them. If we're going to combat selfishness, we want to develop things like kindness, thoughtfulness of others, sensitivity. We're going to use character quality words, but we want to define them. So that would be another thing we're teaching, to choose a word that we're going to use. Maybe it be kindness, as we started in the family challenge, or maybe it be sensitivity to others, and define it for children. That means being aware of how another person is feeling. Teaching children to be more thoughtful involves using character quality words and talking about it throughout the day then.
And it's not just relational words. Sometimes it has to do with one's person, what's inside of them, that just deal with themselves. Like flexibility, for example, is one of those things a person can develop, so that it doesn't always have to be about me. I can flow with this in order to make some changes. So flexibility is one of those internal qualities. See, I think what Joanne's saying is we don't just focus on the problem, focus on the solution. And if we're working towards something, toward a goal of equality, then good things can happen.
Another goal we can work on is learning to let it go. Children need to learn to let it go. If their emotions are overwhelming them, or they just want it so badly, they're just so set on having a certain thing or activity, they've got to let it go. And so we want to talk about that in family life too, the benefits of letting it go. It makes you a more flexible person. It allows you to have peace on the inside, even when you don't get what you want. So we're going to do some teaching about letting it go as well.
You know, Connie mentioned here, she says, I created a visual board to explain selfishness using his actual tendencies. And then he had to identify which one was selfish and which one was not based on who is happy, only him or him, God, and others. More on this in the Facebook post. So Connie, did she already post that? I didn't see that. I hope you're going to post that. If you didn't already, Connie, post it there. That would be helpful. Anna says this: the challenge helped raise awareness in our family to see honor. The kids were able to affirm each other. Great family conversations. So one of the things that's happening, I think, in people's lives when they do something like the family challenge is it starts moving something inside the heart of a child. Children start to think differently. They start to act differently. And when that takes place, good things happen. So look for ways to teach children. Children sometimes think that you owe me, you know, you should, this entitlement mentality. And we teach them, no, you know what? Privilege and responsibility go together. We don't just give you things. You've got to demonstrate some responsibility here. Or sometimes we have children earn privileges in order to help them. So it's important to recognize how this works.
Sure. And being specific about how to earn the privilege of a cell phone or the privilege of being able to babysit. How are you going to earn that? What are the specific things that we see? And they're not just behavior things, they're character things. See, and that's where, again, we're looking for heart issues. If the child wants to be able to babysit, well, they need to be able to demonstrate kindness with their siblings first. They need to be responsible when no one's home, do the right thing when no one's watching. List the specific character qualities you're looking for if the child is going to have that privilege. It's the same thing with internet access and cell phones and all of these privileges that children expect. We want to define what does responsibility look like, or what does the character look like that will allow us to give that privilege to you.
Another way that we can help children grasp these ideas is to use Bible stories and Bible passages. The story of David and Nabal, for example. Nabal, his name means fool. And so that story in the Bible is an interesting one. The Good Samaritan story is a famous one that has to do with unselfishness. Also looking at a character like Esther and how she had to not just focus on herself, but was called for a specific purpose. Bible stories help children to grasp this. And the Bible even says about itself that it has this power in it, this power to touch the thoughts and intentions of the heart. So looking at that can be strategic. The key verse that we're using for this whole family challenge is the one from Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. It says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others." Wow, that just epitomizes the whole biblical concept of honor. And so this idea of not just thinking about yourself, but valuing other people, doing things for other people more than what's expected, because it's expected to look at your own interests, but look at the interests of others. That's doing more than what's expected. It's this whole concept of honor embraced in these verses. But there are a number of verses you can use. Here's a few more. You might take a screenshot of this and look up these verses. Well, I'm not going to take a lot of time to go into the scriptures now, but there are a number of verses that talk about what it means to be unselfish. Having children memorize some of these verses is great because it gets into their head and then gets down to their heart. So that becomes a great way to catch children on a level that's teaching them and grasping some things that are very important for their hearts.
So memorizing those scriptures is important, and talking about them as a family. One of the amazing things about honor is the internal reward one feels. And you know, in our world, we think we're only going to get what we take for ourselves. But when we begin to honor and to give to others, God blesses us. And that's not something you necessarily can convince someone of until they experience it. And when your children start demonstrating honor and experiencing that internal reward, you want to talk about it and highlight it and acknowledge it and help children see the benefits of living an honoring life, not just serving yourself, but serving others. And the rewards that are so rich, that are beyond really your ability to explain them. But when children feel them, you want to take note of that.
And Esme, she is one of our coaches. She says we use Colossians 4:6, this idea of being seasoned with salt. Esme lives in Canada, works with the Malaysian population over in Southeast Asia, and just really valuable to see. Now, some of this is cultural. I think that we have to look at each culture and recognize that there are different ways that honor is demonstrated. Honor is a very significant concept in Asian culture. I remember when I was in Africa and they said, well, what kind of consequence can we use? I said, well, they might have to tell a child they should go to bed early. And they said, what? That's a privilege. Our kids would love to go to bed early. We make them work until it's time to go to bed. And so I think we have to look at this on a cultural level too, but the same biblical principles apply, that we're trying to help our children grasp this idea of what it looks like in very practical ways. Well, let's move on to some training ideas. Keep jotting ideas down that come to your mind, folks, that you can put in the chat of ways you do this. Let's just give you training ideas, because training is our specialty. At the National Center for Biblical Parenting, we develop practical tools that exercise children's hearts. And so when we develop these training exercises with kids, it really does something to bring about significant change. We're always looking for these training exercises. Well, let's share a few of those with you that can help you as you're trying to be intentional in your home to deal with the selfishness that you see.
Sure. And certainly we started this whole family challenge with an exercise of demonstrating kindness, having the child required to do something contributing to the family, another family member, as well as your home. Those kind of exercises are very important to change the habits, to change the tendencies of only thinking of my own needs. So keep up those acts of kindness, talking about them at the end of the day. What were you able to do? And how did that person respond is a great question to ask. Just bring, again, the benefit of showing kindness and seeing the delight on another person's face.
There are certain times in a child's life when selfishness seems to be more prevalent. It centers around sometimes birthdays, Christmas, those kinds of things where children tend to be more selfish. I think that one of the training exercises we can engage in is to say, okay, Christmas is coming. What are you going to do to give to others? Or your birthday's coming. How can you bless others? And some kids, okay, what? It's my birthday. Everybody should be blessing me. And now we're coming along and we're saying no. And when it's your birthday, you have an opportunity to bless other people. So we're turning that around and helping children see that in those moments where they're most prone to selfishness are really opportunities that they can think about others. It's like having a play date over. Many children will want a person to come over as a play date so that they can play what I want to play with. And it's all about me. And we say, okay, your friend's coming over. So what are you going to do to honor your friend so that you can play something your friend likes to play? How can you make your friend feel good about coming over? What kind of snack should we have that your friend would like? All of that is looking for activities in life, practice opportunities to bless other people, not just think about self.
Absolutely. Demonstrating hospitality, teaching children even when they're young how to demonstrate hospitality is a great exercise. Serving others, certainly. What can we do for the neighbors? What can we do for someone who's sick? Working as a family to honor others, I think, is really helpful. We require it of our children. Sometimes as parents, we just do things, but to work together as a family to demonstrate honor, whether that be serving a neighbor or someone who is ill, or maybe it's serving the baseball team after practice by helping to clean up and serving the coach in that way. But looking for ways as a family to serve others is a great activity to work on.
Here's another one that I think can do a lot of good in a child's heart. We call it gratefulness therapy. I like the word therapy because it implies practice. That's what therapy is, whether it's speech therapy or occupational therapy or physical therapy, it's practice sessions. And some children need gratefulness therapy. And not just saying thank you. I think manners are good. And so children need to be in the habit of saying thank you after a meal. When a meal is over, they thank the person who cooked it. They need to be the habit of thanking people for the rides that they get to and from school or over to a friend's house. They need to be habit of thanking a parent for going out and grocery shopping and buying the things that they needed to buy. So that is part of gratefulness therapy, but I think thank you notes are great. Children can write thank you notes to someone and they have to think, well, what can I thank them for? And so now they're forced out of their selfish zone into this gratefulness mode. And I just think gratefulness is so important in a child's life and can move them toward unselfishness. So it's strategic.
Certainly, gratefulness is just therapeutic in so many situations. No matter how bad your life is, there's something to be grateful for. And being in the habit of talking about being grateful. Whenever you're disappointed, the way out of disappointment is gratefulness. There's always things we need to be grateful for. And so we want to develop those habits in our children of just thinking about what I'm grateful for, because that's emotionally healthy thinking. Another thing we want to do is send children on missions of honor throughout the house. Just think, can you just go take an honor look in the kitchen? That just means what? Go in and look and see what else I can do to clean up, to straighten up, to honor the family in the kitchen. Go take an honor look in the bathroom. Just clean it up, straighten it up. I think children, so often we give them very specific instructions, which is good because we teach them how to clean a room with specific instructions. But sometimes we want to just rely on their ability to observe. Just go take a look and see what needs to be done and do it. And that way they're taking some initiative. They're a little bit more empowered to go beyond the bare minimum and do that little bit extra because they can see what needs to be done. Oh yeah, I observed that. I observed that. I saw that. And so they've got the ability then to fix those things and report back. And of course, it's helps everyone out when they're able to do that.
I like the story of one client I worked with, a 10-year-old who was very self-focused, and mom did this, said, I want you to go in the living room and have an honor look. And so she explained, go in there, see something that's wrong and fix it. And so he went into the living room, and then he has to report back. We always have children report back because the accountability is very important for them. He reports back and said, I'm done. So she said, okay, what did you do? I put the pillows off the floor onto the couch. And mom said, good. That's great. That's honor. I wish more people would take the pillows from the floor and put them on the couch. But let me tell you what else you could have done. You could have taken these plates and cups that are in here from last night's activity and taken them, put them in the kitchen. You could have taken those papers and put them in the recycling. You could have gotten the vacuum cleaner out and vacuumed the floor. All of that would have been honoring. I'm telling you that because in a few hours, I'm going to give you another honor assignment. And I want you to be able to think of something that you can do that contributes to family life. When you use honor, it's different than obedience. Honor says, go find something that needs to be done. Obedience tells them exactly what to do. So honor runs it through the heart, has children look for things that need to be done and do them. That can be a great way to do the honor missions.
Exactly. Another thing we want to do is encourage conversation among children. Children, I think, often tend to want to talk. They want to tell their own story. They may even be boasting. But can we teach children to listen to one another? I think that's really key, to ask good questions of their siblings. They are practicing relationship in a family. And if your children have siblings, you want them to learn how to converse with one another in an honoring way. Last week, my grandchildren started school, and I picked up my 5-year-old from kindergarten, and her 3-year-old brother had been in preschool that day. And so when she got in the car, I encouraged her to ask her brother how his first day went. Everybody was asking her about her first day, but it was gentle the way she asked her brother and encouraged him in conversation then about what he did in school today. So I just think we want to give children an opportunity to converse well with each other, to ask questions, to ask follow-up questions, not just to tell their story, to turn our children into good listeners.
We're running almost to the hour here. So let me just give one more idea here. I think would be helpful. This whole idea of contentment, working with contentment with children, which is the ability to live within limits. When a child gets a no answer, do they complain and whine, argue and badger? I think those are examples of selfishness. When children learn contentment, that is the ability to live within limits, good things happen. When kids get to be teenagers, sometimes they go outside of the limits to find pleasure or identity. They need to learn to live within limits. Contentment is strategic. And it really cuts down on the selfishness that drives children outside of the boundaries, and it creates some significant challenges for them. So that's another idea. What we've tried to do, and what we've done, is be proactive here in our teaching. What we want to do is switch over here in just a moment and allow you to ask us some real questions about situations maybe going on in your home. And we can give you some kind of corrective solutions or some ideas of how you can move to the next level in your own family. But what we tried to do today with you is try to illustrate what we've taught in the honor material, so that when you get that, you go, yes, this is just what I want. We've tried to raise the awareness level of selfishness. We've tried to do some teaching about it, and we've tried to do some training. All of that becomes very important in family life. If you think in terms of those three elements, you'll be right with us. And if you want a lot more ideas than the honor material, either the children's program or the book, or listen to the audio session, all will give you more information about that. So let's just open it up now for an opportunity for people to share or maybe ask a question about a particular problem going on in your home. The way to do that is just, why don't you raise your hand? There's a way to raise your hand. If you go into the participants section, and next to your name, it has a little thing, raise your hand. So if you raise your hand, then we'll be able to call on you. You can turn on your mic and your video if you'd like, and you can ask a question, and then we can respond to that question directly if you'd like. So this gives us an opportunity to allow you to direct the teaching, because likely there's some things that we didn't share here that would be helpful for you to hear. So when you tell us a story of what's going on in your home, or you give us a challenge that you're experiencing, we can share with you some things that we had intended to share, but would be really helpful in the midst of this. So if you have a question, you can go ahead and ask it, or you can, if you can't figure out the whole chat thing, then you can just raise your hand and wave at us or something, and we'll call on you so that you can unmute yourself and move forward. It looks like Mark is asking a question in the chat, which is another way you can ask a question. What do you do when a child refuses to take a break when directed? Okay, now the break is a tool we use in the National Center for Biblical Parenting that gives a child a strategy for when they're off track. Keep that in mind. The break is not a punishment, it's an adult skill. So the break is this idea that says, I can't continue moving forward if I'm yelling or arguing, if I'm fighting or being selfish. And my mom says, son, you need to take a break. It's really important for us to pull back and be able to address that. So that's why Mark's asking this important question about the break and he's saying, what do you do when a child refuses to take a break when directed? When you say, son, you need to take a break, and the son says, no, I'm not taking a break. What do you do in that moment? It's a very important question. What I suggest to parents is this. First, you repeat the words, you need to now, you need to look at the child and not or yelling at the child, but firmly say, you need to go take a break now. So you're again reiterating this. But if the child then says, no, I'm not taking a break, or starts throwing himself on the floor, or yelling, or doing whatever kids do, then it's often best to walk away. So you want to walk away, allowing something very important in family life to work, we call time. Time then you walk away saying you're doing the wrong thing, or you walk away saying you are in a break. Settle down, come back and see me when you're ready. And you walk away from the child so as not to engage in the heightened episodes. We don't want parents engaging with children to escalate emotions. It is not necessary for heart change to take place. So let's not do that. Let's use this break as a way to help children pull back. And then when the situation resolves itself somehow over the next period of time, we're looking for progress, not perfection, but it'll resolve itself somehow. Then we're going to say, look, before we can go forward, you need to practice taking a break. I know you didn't do anything wrong at the moment, but you need to show me that you can take a break. So we practice the break at non-disciplined times to help children get it. There's a belief probably in the child's mind that says the break is a punishment, not an adult skill. Or if I have to go to a break, that means that I'm inadequate, or I'm shamed, or something like that. We are not doing that. We're saying, this is something you need to do. So we're trying to bypass those things, and then it becomes one of those things we require. That we are essentially going to say, you're in a break until you go and put your bottom in the hall. Like I told you, all life stops for you. I find that the best times to practice a break are when the child actually wants something. We're going out to the soccer game, or we're going to watch a movie or something, and we have a problem. We say, you need to go take a break. Oh, you're not going to take a break? Well, then you miss out on what's going on. And so now there's this pressure, this internal pressure the child feels that they need to go through this cycle. We call it a cycle. They need to go to the internal cycle. It is a structure we teach in the coaching program that helps children make changes. It's a very, very important one. It's one that God uses with his children. It's one that we use with our children. It's not time out. We don't like time out. It's we're trying to move forward, and we're trying to move it as a skill. Okay. Okay, let's take love-driven builder. Who is that person? Why don't you go ahead and
Hi, this is Philip.
Philip,
Yeah, I just signed up today. Thank you. I
yeah.
couldn't change the name here, so that's why it's just automatically like this.
Philip
But
just signed up to be in the coaching program, to be trained. So
wonderful.
anyway, I'm glad I get to see. I'm glad you introduced yourself. So now I see your face as I interact with the training that we're doing. So welcome.
And I see Linda, who invited me in. So shout out to Linda. I guess my question is, kids are really good in like tapping into the dad, and the dad said no, then they go into mom, and mom is like not answering. Then they said, oh, I got a permission. The context is that we're traveling a couple months right now in California from New York. And
Jojo been on yet? Okay, well, maybe she'll be on next.
Go ahead.
And and my wife's sister, we're staying together, in an apartment, and my wife's sister is like really generous person, meaning like, oh, like a grandparent situation, like, oh, you want this, let's go to Target and I'll give you this and give you that, Amazon this, Amazon that. So kids are really like taking a perfect advantage of that situation. And
Yes.
it's kind of yeah, we have that kind of conflict.
I
I don't know if that's
understand. So
parenting conflict, but yeah.
thank you for asking that question. The kids are really smart, aren't they? I mean, they know just how to work the system. So yeah, I would say that when we see that taking place, that's a manipulation that we need to call children on. So let's say that mom says, no, we're not having any candy right now. Dad says, oh, yeah, sure, you can have a piece of candy. But dad doesn't know that mom already said no, and the child's doing the wrong thing. So I would say in that case, we're gonna call that child to account and say, look, if you ask mom and she says no, you can't go to dad and ask for that. If you do, you're doing the wrong thing. And so then, we're calling them account. Whether we have to go into some kind of a more extensive discipline depends on how prevalent this is. But then it's going to, if we got this as a continual problem, then we're going to go back and mom's going to say, let me talk to dad first about this, so that we got this agreement going on to prevent that. And then when grandma's saying, hey, I want to buy this. Oh, she wants this. I want to get it for her. And we say to grandma, look, it's okay. I know you want to give things, because grandparents are so great at this, and we want grandparents involved, and grandparents get to do that. They often have the money and they have that love for their kids. And so we say, let's limit this somehow. Okay, I think it's good for you to do a few things, but let's not do too much. And so we're somehow trying to corral this, because we don't want the selfishness to grow. I think it's helpful to say to a grandparent, would you help me on this? We're seeing tendencies to selfishness in our daughter. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to help her learn how to think of others. If you could help her think of others and ways to do that, I think that would be really helpful. So we want to try to get them working on the same page. Well, let's go to Ezraim from Nigeria, who says this. Let me try to read this. It says, my twin girls will always report and complain of one thing or the other. In the family, we looked at the issue of the love of Christ for us. Selfishness prevents us from showing as instructed in the scriptures. In the family discussion, we agreed that instead of complaining, we just say, God bless you to the person who hurt us. And that worked very well, that when they say, God bless you to the person who wronged, the person now realizes that she did something wrong and quickly say, I'm sorry. Now, when they say that to themselves, they now sit down and sort the issue out themselves without complaining to any adult. That's cool, isn't it? I can imagine you doing that with Megan, with Madison and Nathan. I really like that. I think that that's a good idea. Ezraim, thank you for sharing that. I think you've got some real wisdom there. It's super that you're able to work on those things. And I always find it fascinating when Ezraim's in the coaching training right now too. Yes. And we've got someone who's working with people from Papua New Guinea with 2 clients there. So we have people always from other countries in the coach training. And it's so fun to watch how God's principles work in different ways in different cultures. But God's principles are true wherever you go. And I just love to see that take place. So sometimes the people who need help in the coaching program are not in the United States. And I have a US coach who wants to work with someone. So I'll give them someone from Latvia, because I have some people signed up for Latvia that are waiting for coaches. And so I'll have someone in the United States work with them, and they go, Latvia, I don't even know where that is. So, but it's great to see God working in the lives of people that way. It's really great. Well, so Mark's responding again on this issue of the break. That's exactly what she has communicated, that it's a punishment even when we explain it as a skill. Yes, it's going to take some work to retrain children to recognize that the break is not a punishment. And children need to learn how to receive correction. They need to learn how to receive criticism in a good way, and that's hard. So I like to use Proverbs 6:23, the corrections of discipline are the way to life. Great verse. Another one is Proverbs 12:1, he who hates correction is stupid. We don't use the word stupid in our family, but that's what the Bible uses there. So we talk about that because correction is a gift. that we have and we receive that we really need. So yeah, I would continue to work on that break. It is a very important tool that is not optional. It's a required course in God's curriculum. It's in our curriculum too.
And I think as parents, sometimes we need to take a break so we can demonstrate that for our children. You know, I'm feeling upset right now. I just need to take a break. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So kids see it is an adult skill. We all take a break from time to time. It's helpful for us to regain emotional composure so we can solve the problem that we're addressing. So I would also demonstrate it.
Connie has some wisdom about this too. And she's saying, she's a coach, and she's saying with my 5-year-old, explaining a break as a skill doesn't make sense to him. But explaining that he must first gain control of himself before we can move on worked much better. So that's another way with a young child to explain the break in a way that's more productive. You know, one of the ways that we see selfishness take place, and this is in the children's curriculum from the Kids Honor Club, we have 3 different lessons on sibling conflict, because I find that sibling conflict is one of those areas where selfishness is so prevalent. And there are 3 roadblocks to sibling harmony that generate the sibling conflict. They're anger episodes or anger. The second one is selfishness, wanting to be first or best. And the third one is foolishness. That's not recognizing the consequences of my actions. And so we have a lesson in the children's program, one lesson on each one of those that contributes to some very valuable thoughts and teaching for children. And so I say we break it down. That's what I want to do with children. I want to take the complicated concepts of selfishness, break them down into smaller pieces so that children can grasp them, put them into practice. Let's do some training exercises. Let's move some children from the challenges that they're facing into something much more powerful that they can work with. Well, looks like we're running out of questions here. We're grateful that people have responded here. Let me just review some things that you're going to want to keep in mind. There is a product that can help you greatly. We've put it all on sale. It's called the Honor Special that contains the book, the children's program, and the audio session. We encourage you to take a look at that. There's also the Biblical Parenting Coaching Program that will help any parent work with their children to learn and understand a heart-based approach to help their children be able to move forward in strategic ways. Major change takes place in the life of a child in that 8-week period of time. And maybe you'd like to become a coach. If you are, then you want to find out the information at biblicalparenting.coach to learn more about it. All of this information that you're learning today and that we're talking about is contained in the Take the Family Challenge website. And there we have a lot of resources that are available for people. What are some of the things that are there now?
Well, you've got the 5-day challenge videos that you had created. Those are there. There's also a podcast that was released this past Monday, and there'll be another one coming up next week. And those of you, I'm assuming all of you are signed up right now to take the family challenge. You should be receiving those parenting tips as well.
So we
every
have
week.
Parenting tips will come out again next
Once a
week.
week, yeah.
Yes, for that people as well. And this webinar?
Yes, that's going to be available on the website as well. So probably won't be uploaded there until maybe Tuesday, but it will be available on that website as well.
So today's Monday.
Oh,
So let's
how
give
about
them a couple of
Wednesday?
days. Yeah. Maybe we'll just have to wait.
We'll
and
see. We'll
see.
let you know.
Okay.
We'll let you know when it's there as well.
Yeah, we'll get it up there. So please take a note of all those things. Use them not only for yourselves, but share them with other people. You know that in these times, parents are dealing with selfishness in children. And we've got lots of ideas that we want to run. We were thinking originally we'd do 12 challenges, one every month, but we thought, well, people are going to get so tired of that. They're not going to be able to do that. So we're going to put a blank month in October to recoup, get ready for all the things we want to share in our next challenge number 2, which is developing closeness, reducing tension. I think you'll find it fascinating as you try to regain some of your mission that God has given to you in family life. That closeness is not just so you can have a close family, it's so that you can reach out to others. We've got some practical ideas, a 5-day challenge for you when it comes to closeness. We'll show you what that looks like in some practical ways as we get closer. Well, let me pray for us all as we conclude our time together. I want to thank you again for being a part of this. And again, thanks to our donors who have made this possible, and welcome anyone who'd consider being one of our support personnel as a donor. We would really appreciate that as well. Let's pray together. So Heavenly Father, thank you for the time we can spend, for technology that allows us to connect over the many countries and states that we're in. We ask, Lord, that you would bless all of these folks as they try to influence their families, and many of them trying to influence other families. We pray that you'd help them in this area of dealing with selfishness and draw attention to it and bring children to this place where they can honor other people and especially honor you. So we thank you for what you've done, and we do praise you and honor you tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much, folks, for joining with us. We'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Watch the emails. Watch for the things that are going down. We have over 1,000 people who've taken this challenge. We've got over 400 and some people who are in the Facebook group. All those are going to continue now. We're going to continue to add to that as we go to challenge number 2. But let's stay on challenge number 1 for another couple of weeks here. Get as much as we can. We'll throw some more ideas so people who can come back and discover this can go and learn more about challenge number 1 and all about selfishness. We'll create a page for this other challenge in a little bit. God bless you guys.
Continue to interact with us on the Facebook page. We're there. We'll answer questions that way as well.
Yes, we'd love to be able to hear what you're doing, what works. In fact, if you tell us something you learned from this webinar there, we'd appreciate that as well. Okay? All right. Have a good rest of the day. God bless you.
Thank you.